Duncan, what's his name?
We're live. Justin always has a penchant for talking while we go live.
You told me to look it up. I looked it up.
I said I'm going to start the show. All right, so what's up, guys? We're going to talk a little bit about the Badgers are once again in the market for an offensive line coach. We were both actually up just kind of like chatting about it. And we're like, why don't we just go live and chat about it with the community? Let's bring everybody into this. So kind of a bonus episode, but let's talk about it. Let's chop it up on Wisconsin.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day, sometimes more than once a day. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. So news broke today. Offensive line coach Jack McNeil Jr. is going to be reassigned. It didn't say fired. We don't have a ton of details, and I don't really want to speculate. Unless
sounds like he's going to be an analyst.
Right. So he's moved somewhere inside the program. The bigger picture, he's not going to be the offensive line coach anymore. The two things I want to kind of start the show off with, and Justin, I'll let you go. I'll let you pick which one you want to start with. How much of this is on Luke Fickell, or do we want to talk about the turnover that this position has had in the coaching ranks for the last 5 years?
Well, let's talk about Fickell first.
Okay.
Because this is we're kind of getting a feel for everything that's coming out after this first year and how he handles like a lack of production and problems within his group. I think you and I discussed this a little bit, and I said I didn't think a lot of it was on him because I think that this was a Longo request. But I think that ultimately, as we discussed, it falls on the head coach. Like he's the one that is at the top of the hill. When things don't go as planned, he's going to be the guy that is hearing about it. And this season didn't go as planned. The offensive line wasn't good for a lot of the season. And our running game wasn't good. But there's a lot of factors in what the offensive line was this year. Like we passed the ball a lot more. So when people start throwing out rushing tallies and what the Wisconsin rushing game was like this year, I look at it and I'm like, we also had games where we threw the ball 40 times.
Sure.
I can't put that on the rushing. Like the running game is not going to have a lot of yardage when you're behind in games or you feel the offensive coordinator feels that the best opportunity to make plays is in the passing game. So you have to kind of look at it. There's a lot of nuance to this, but I do think it was promising to see that he was not happy with what happened. And he decided we need to make a change here because I'm not happy. This is not up to the level of expectation that I have.
Matt says, hi. What's up, Matt? Hey, buddy. So I put most of this. I think you and I disagreed a little bit on this. I put most of this on Luke Fickell. Ultimately, you are responsible as the head coach for the people that are hired to your staff. I do agree with you. I think Longo, obviously, you'd have worked with them. It was probably a Longo recommendation. Longo was probably really high on him, said this guy can do it. But ultimately, Luke Fickell is not a first-time head coach. He's been around enough, no other offensive line coaches. And he said, rubber stamped it, said, yep, let's go with him. That's on him, ultimately. Now, the second part of what you said, I also really agree with. Like, this is actually something, I don't have a ton of praise for James Franklin, Penn State's head coach. But one of the things I really like that he does is when there's a coach he doesn't like, he cuts bait. He doesn't let it linger. He doesn't try to work it another year.
Mm-hmm.
I like that aspect of Luke Fickell. Like, it's decisive. If this doesn't work, all right, we're moving on. I like that, but you also got it's better if you make the right hire the first time, right? That's the point.
100%.
For whatever reason, that didn't happen. I don't put the Mike Brown thing too much on this. I mean, he got poached. Notre Dame came and got him. I don't think he was a great fit, but this one feels more like a mishire. And to me, most of that lies at the head coach's doorstep because he's that good.
Yeah, and I won't argue that at all. I mean, when it comes down to it, I think that he was relying a little too much on what Longo was telling him or what he felt the level of trust that he had in Longo in terms of his recommendation, and he probably shouldn't have. Now, we've kind of discussed a little bit about who potentially are options to refill this. I brought up the guy from Kansas. I want to preface this with there is nothing I know that says that that's the guy. And I think people really, when it comes to offensive line coaching and play, it's really difficult for me to say, yeah, take a look at that guy. He's a good guy for this because the type of offense that they're playing can be so different. Kansas is a triple option type scheme that they're doing a lot of moving around and pulling and stuff like that when they're snapping. That's not necessarily what Wisconsin's doing here. So when I throw a guy out there like that because I've seen him be effective, that doesn't necessarily mean that bringing a guy like that into Wisconsin is going to be a good fit for what we're trying to do. And that's ultimately that's the biggest factor here. You need somebody that's going to get the best out of these guys and who's the best fit for what they're trying to do offensively.
Mm-hmm. And let's then shift a little bit to the turnover at this position, right? This position in 5 years has gone from Joe Rudolph to Bob Bosted to Al Johnson to Jack Bicknell Jr. to a new guy. Mm-hmm. Listen, we just saw multiple in the last couple of years, multiple 4- and 5-star players transfer out of Wisconsin at the offensive line spot. You're not going to develop if you have a new offensive line coach every single year. Like,
I won't argue that. Yeah,
you have to, and you mentioned this before the show. Like, I put this out on Twitter or in the Discord, one of the two, I forget. You got to hit a home run now. You got to get a guy in here and stop shuffling offensive line coaches every year because it's sad what's become of offensive line you. You can't have that if you cycle coaches every single year. And listen, Luke Fickell knows that. Like, he's smarter than I am with football. He knows that. But all right, now let's get a guy in here and let's develop some dudes.
This has got to be a home run hire, and they need, because honestly, this is going to be the offense was bad this last year, and part of it was the offensive line. We weren't great. Like, you can have mediocre running backs, and if you have a really good offensive line, those guys can play up a level. We definitely didn't do that this last year. The scheme-wise, the blocking scheme from people who knew better than me, the style of blocking that they said, there have been significant changes too across all three of the offensive line coaches that were there. They all had a different style. They all wanted to block things differently. I think one of the pluses to this is that moving from Bicknell to somebody else, we're staying with the same offensive style. So ideally, they're probably going to have somebody that's going to come in that's going to be similar to what he was teaching. And that will hopefully be a net positive, because it won't be like we're scrapping everything and starting from square one technique-wise again with all these guys. And if that's the case, you can build on things. Yeah. Then maybe you're not in too bad a shape.
That's a good point. No, that's a really good point. And with Bicknell still on staff too, Longo still on staff, you should be able to build at least somewhat on what you've had. You're still going to have a different personality for people to get used to, though, right? You're still going to. It's not going to be seamless, but that is a very good point that it shouldn't all be starting over from scratch. You know, it's the other thing I'd say, and you see it every time a coach is fired, Justin. It's which former Badger can come in here and coach. You don't want Joe Thomas.
Yeah,
I mean, no. Thomas won't do it.
Well, I said this when people started mentioning it. I instantly said, you don't want any ex-Badger, because none of them have played this style of offensive line. They were all like a run-heavy pro-style offensive line. They are not guys who are used to being in a wide split, spread offensive line style and trying to do that. So I think it'd be a terrible idea to bring somebody from Wisconsin in that when that's not what we want to be doing from a methodology.
And well, that's a great point. I didn't even really go to that point. That's probably a better point than mine was just, why would a multimillionaire like Joe Thomas want to recruit and deal with this? Like
he doesn't. He's got young children for one thing. He doesn't want anything to do with the grind of coaching day to day and doing 16-hour days. Yeah.
You definitely want somebody who's going to go in there and really just live on the road, recruit like an animal. That's what you need. You need like a young Bob Bosted with better recruiting chops, essentially. Someone in the comments said, I didn't know this, and I still don't know if this is true. Matt Van Grimson says Joe Thomas lives in Germany. Is that true?
Somebody mentioned that he had something that he was doing over there.
That's interesting.
So that may be reality. I thought Brian Anderson had mentioned him too, that he might be doing something. So I'm not sure what that's about. I thought he was living here in the area, but maybe that's changed.
Must be why he's not returning my calls.
Yeah, that's it.
Time zone thing. I never. It makes sense now. I get it, Joe. Let's get a quick break for our friends of the show, and then whatever else you guys want to talk about with this offensive line stuff. We have a couple of comments that I wanted to get into too. Just some people disagreeing with some of our takes from our earlier shows. A few people disagreeing with maybe Justin's take on the upside of Connor Sejan, my take on the depth of the team. Definitely want to get into that coming up next. And we're always here for it, right? If you guys disagree, put the comment in. As long as it's respectful, it goes on the show and we talk about it. Because we're not the smartest guys in the room. I mean, Justin is smarter than I am. Like, we get your comments and thoughts and we talk about it and discuss it because that's what this is all about.
I think people will debate that.
I don't know. But either way, like, there's great opinions out there. right? And we're all about putting them up here and talking about them. And that's what this is about, even when they disagree with ours. All right, today's episode, Justin, is brought to you by FanDuel. What do you think is more likely this year? What would you put your futures FanDuel bet on? Badgers getting into the Final Four or 49ers winning a Super Bowl? Impartially, just be impartial. 49ers going to the Super Bowl. How about that? Not winning.
I would say that the likelihood is much higher that the 49ers are going to the Super Bowl.
My man.
And I know you set that question up wanting that result.
Yes, I did. I did. And you can do it all on FanDuel, Justin. Future, spreads, parlays, teasers. It's all there. New customers, which you could be. I don't think you already are because I think you have a FanDuel account. I don't think you do, actually, because you can't in Wisconsin.
I can't. Wisconsin is holding me back. Otherwise, I likely would.
New customers, $5 bet. You get $150 back in bonus bets. Win or lose, it's free money, bonus bet money. Find bets in the new Explore tab, parlays, spreads, teasers. Like I said, it's all there. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of the NFL. Today's episode also brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is the number one place to buy all your tickets. Get everything in advance. You don't have to plan about it. You don't have to worry about logistics. Just if we are talking about a Badger run, which I know Justin is thinking about it, right? People on the Twitter sphere are thinking about it. You can buy those tickets on Gametime. You can go get those tickets for the Big Ten tournament on Gametime. Get them for a buddy. Get them for yourself. Cheaper, faster, flash deals. You get pictures of the seats before you buy the tickets, so you know exactly what's there. And they have everything: theater, concerts, comedy. It's all there on Gametime. Fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds. 2 taps and you're in and out. Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app. Create an account. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create the account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right. Before we go anywhere else, Justin, I want to ask you this. Because I used to take you off for the ad reads, now I leave you on. Which one do you like more?
It depends if I need a drink or something like that or need to walk away for a couple of seconds.
Yeah,
Whatever.
This is kind of easier for me, but like I realized
I don't mind.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't mind.
So, Justin, I teased it. And, guys, in the comments, guys and gals in the comments, if you have any questions, thoughts on this offensive line stuff, put it in there. We'll start. We'll talk about it.
I'm going to throw up Bo Dragon's comment here real quick first. Bo, you can't teach line of scrimmage talent. It's recruited. I will disagree with that, actually. On the defensive line, I would agree with it. On the offensive line side, I think it's far more difficult to tell who's going to be. And a lot of the times, these 4- and 5-star guys, they don't turn out. We see plenty of guys that come out in the first round of the draft who were a 3-star. And I would actually like to see the hit rate for offensive linemen that are 4- and 5-star talents. I bet it's actually pretty low. It's probably one of the lower ones positionally out of the 5-star and 4- and 5-star talent ranges. But honestly, looking at our offensive line this year, we had 2 4-stars at the tackle positions, and the rest were 3-stars or lower.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it kind of tells you. And there were 4-stars sitting behind them who are not playing. So, I mean, there's a lot of talent development that takes place with that. But there's also, it's so hard to tell because you'll have a guy that comes in, the 3-star guy who is 6'5", 245 pounds coming out of high school, who needs a couple of years to bulk up and turns into a monster once he actually gets to the right weight and is more athletic and flexible than the guy who came in at 300 pounds that just, it wasn't there. Like some of these guys just don't develop the same way once they get into a strength and conditioning program. So, I mean,
it's a super interesting question. I think it's like this. I think every single position can be further maximized by having an elite coach, right?
Yeah. And ideally, you're getting a guy who's good at both development, evaluation.
You get the guy who's recruiting coach. I tend to think offensive line, there's more of a coaching impact in that. I really do. I
would agree with that.
I think there's more of a coaching element to offensive line. I think that pendulum is more in the middle. Whereas we talked about running back. I think running back, if you have to lean one way, you want a guy who's an elite recruiter.
Yeah. Looking at like the Kansas guy who we were talking about earlier, Kansas became a dominant offensive team like right out of the bat when Leipold went there. A big part of that is the fact that the guy was able to evaluate and find guys and develop them quickly. With their defense, it's clearly a talent issue. Like you can't just cover up those things by getting a 2-star guy and saying, well, we'll coach him up. If they don't have the athletic tools on the defensive side, there's not a lot you can do.
I like this comment from Tim because I think he might have hit the nail on the head. Eval is the most important part of
I would agree with that.
Like, you got to find the offensive line coach who can find those guys who he thinks can develop. Like, that is maybe the best skill for an offensive line coach. Justin, let me throw some of these comments in here. I want to throw this one up quick with not a whale. Does Guyton pass your standards for recruiting and a receiver coach, Ryan? I want to be super clear. Like, I don't know. Right? Like, I hope so. I like what I know about him, but I certainly don't want to pass myself off as like the expert of what a coach is or can't be. I like the recruiting results he's had at Arkansas. Like, that's something tangible you can look at. I like the playing background that he has in the Midwest at Ohio State. I think there's connections there. He's recruited Texas.
He's from Texas, so he's got the advantage of that.
I like those things, but listen, it's wait and see. I'm certainly not here to pass a judgment before he's even been here a year.
I would agree with that too. I think that from a recruiting standpoint, he looks like he's done some really good things in that regard, but I don't know how good of a coach he is. And I don't know, is he capable of getting us into battles that we weren't before? Like, it really is going to come down to what type of guys he likes to get in. The one thing I did like looking at the Arkansas roster is there were several guys that were 6'3".
Yeah.
Those big, tall, lanky guys that you can get out there. Now, I don't know how many of them were hits that were that size, but it would be nice to have a few bodies out there that are 6'3", 190 or 200 pounds that are guys that are capable of being mismatch problems because of their size.
Mm-hmm. Justin, I want to go here. We had a couple people throw some questions our way, maybe, again, disagreements or slight disagreements. This is from Bob N. I'm going to let you take this one. Ease up, Justin. Store Blackwell and now a Siege in our NBA players ? This is from our live show today.
Yeah, and I will go out there and say that each of them has NBA upside and to a different degree. I think Store is a guy who's a first-round pick if everything hits. I think Blackwell has a chance to be a guy who likely is probably more of a second-round type pick, but a guy who I think can click when he gets to the NBA and be a really good rotational piece for somebody for a long time. There's a lot of things that he does really well and has a really good IQ that will play at the NBA level. And when it comes to a Siege, there's always a place for guys who can shoot. Like, if he can be even capable of defending at a D+ level, if he can shoot when they need somebody out there to create space for the guys who can drive, he'll find 10 minutes a game. It's not like he's going to go out there and be a guy who's going to be a top rotational piece. I'm talking about him being a guy who's capable of being able to go out there and steal a few minutes here and there for an NBA team. And that's more than most of these guys are capable of doing.
Let me ask you this. I'm putting you on the spot here, but it's 11:47 Eastern. This is just a kind of a fun show. And in the chat, let us know this too. I'm curious on this one, Justin. I'm going to ask you, Store Blackwell and a Siege. Give me a percentage that you think they'll be drafted. Like, if you are 100% sure AJ Store will be drafted, for example, 100%. What percentage, first or second round, on these guys?
I think Store I'd put at 65%. I'm going to say Blackwell's probably a 50-50 shot. If he, we need to see him obviously take a couple steps.
So first or second round.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not putting him in either round. Yeah, and then Esigian is probably a guy who I could see at like 20%. Like, if things go right for him, he has a chance to do it. But I'm not going to say that he needs to be there. By the end of his college career here, he has to be basically JJ Redick at Wisconsin. Like, he's got to be averaging like 15, 16 points a game and be a very high level shooter in order to be able to steal an opportunity at the NBA.
Troy Glasson says this year or whenever they declare. I mean,
whenever they declare. Yeah, it's not going to be this year. Store's not even ready this year. Like, he's got a lot to clean up in his secondary abilities to be able to get an NBA shot, I think.
So that's really interesting. So you went 20% on the Siege, 60% on Store, and 50-50 on Blackwell.
Yeah.
So I'm higher on Store. I'm lower on the Siege, and I'm probably right there with you on Blackwell. Darren says Store 95%, Blackwell 20%, a Siege 0%, and I love the kid. I would say Store for me, just because the athleticism I think in the shooting will play. To get into the second round, I'm going to say it's like 80-85%. Yeah. I think I'm pretty positive. Rounder.
I might be low on him. I look at him and right now, and I see games like today where there's kind of a hiccup and he's not overly efficient. Mm-hmm. And the secondary numbers just aren't there. Like, Johnny Davis, what got him drafted was, yes, the scoring was inconsistent with him, but he was a top-level rebounder. He was a good free throw shooter. He was a guy who played really hard on defense and actually was a pretty solid defender. And Storr's not that level of defender. He's not a great rebounder. He's a solid passer, but he makes he tries to make some plays that aren't there at times. And they're not always good passes, which is something that I think is problematic. Like he had a couple times where he's throwing it a little too low and stuff like that, and guys just aren't catching it in the pocket where they can do something with it as easily as they should.
But Johnny was a lottery pick. See, I don't think.
Yeah, there is a difference there. There is a difference there. But he is not at Johnny's level, though, either yet.
He's not. But I think if I'm talking second round, I bet you he finds a way in the second round.
He probably will. But I just need – my point is I need to see him. He's going to have to take steps. Like, there's a chance that he's also just this for the rest of his college career. And if that's the case.
Joe Frickleton says 50%, 5%, 0. Like I said, I'm probably higher on Storr. I'd go 80-ish% on Storr. I think it's likely he at least finds in the second round. I think Blackwell, I would go like 35, 40%. I'm not quite 50-50. And then Essegian, I'm way below 20% on that. I'm above 0. Like, I don't think it's a complete 0, but I just don't think he's going to.
He's a situational guy, and I don't even know if he'd be drafted. I think it would be most likely he catches on like a contract or G League type thing where he just develops enough through there to be a rotational piece for somebody as like a 10 through 12 guy.
Try Glasson says Storr 90%, Blackwell 35, Connor 0. If you grew 2 more inches, the chances would be way higher.
I would agree with that.
Tim says Essegian's only 36% from 3. Not clear he's a great shooter. Darren says I think Storr gets strapped on athleticism and projection alone. Yeah, I mean I would agree with that. Let me throw out this next comment because we're just kind of banging on some of the ones. This is for me. This is from Bob M. He says, Badgers were crisp today with lots of depth. Ryan, it's time to admit our depth is good. No, Bob, it's not. No, I'm kidding.
It's getting there.
I would say one of the things I've been consistent on is without Connor, I don't love our depth. If this is a version of Connor we get, I think the depth is better. We still have depth issues in the front court. Let's be super clear on this. Like if Crowell or Wall gets hurt, you're putting Carter Gilmore in the starting lineup. That's problematic.
Which is why Winter has to get minutes because he's got to become more confident than what he is. He plays hard, but we need to see him attack more when he touches the basketball. Today was a nice step forward. He made some nice cuts and he was aggressive at going to the rim. He didn't really hold back when he got the 3-point shooting opportunity. That is something that he was not doing even just a couple of games ago, where he was not shooting when he had touched the ball wide open on 3. And it's like, put it up. You've got to take that shot. You were a high-level 3-point shooter in high school, and nobody's guarding you. That's a wide open look. Take it.
I would say the depth is better. It has, to me, I'm more invested or I've bought more of the depth stock than I did at the beginning of the year because I think Kamari McGee has shown some flashes. If Connor can do well, it's better. So I'm not against admitting I'm wrong, right? Like if the only thing worse than being wrong, Justin, which everybody is at some point in their lives, is being too stubborn to admit when you are wrong. But I still think there's some questions in the front court. But I do think the depth is better than it was early in the year, maybe better than I gave it credit for. I'm totally fine with saying that. John Berger says if he makes it to the Sweet 16, he should be still on the hot seat. If he loses in the first or second round, he should be fired. Justin, if he makes it to the Sweet 16, that's the only part of this. Because he's not getting fired if he makes it to the second round, John. He's just not.
No.
If he makes it to the Sweet 16, is there any reason he should be on the hot seat?
If he makes, looking at what I think this season, the way this season is going to play out, he could flame out in the first round, and I think it's not going to give him a hot seat because the season is going to be, they're going to end up being a 25-win team. And yes, it will look ugly that they lost a game. Number one, they won't because this team is way too efficient offensively. Like they're gonna get matched up against somebody who's just not going to be able to score with them for an entire game. And number two, I think Sweet 16 is becoming, unless they get a really bad matchup for them in the second round, I just don't see a way that they're not making it to the Sweet 16. Like they're going to overwhelm a lot of teams because they do actually have two bigs that can score, and they have plenty of guard depth. And that's a problem that a lot of teams don't have. Like McGee is becoming a guy who you can feel comfortable with being out on the court for a prolonged period. Number one, because he's looking like a plus defender. Number two, he's not really doing anything. Like, you watch him out there. We had him out there for longer stretches in this game, and it was like they're fine with him. He's not making bad mistakes. He's not forcing passes. He's running the offense. He's not trying to take shots that he shouldn't. It was a really nice aggressive take by him on the one where he got the layup. And if this is the player we're going to get from him, he's a great backup. Yeah. He's a guy you're fine with playing 10 minutes.
Also hit the open three.
Yep.
Like, that's the thing. Everybody has different roles, right? If for whatever reason Hepburn were to go down and Klesman's still your starter, there's going to be some real deficiencies there. Like, he has some real holes in his game.
Yeah, you can't afford injuries still. But nobody can.
10 minutes and provide energetic, quick defense. He's not going to be relied on as much of a playmaker role. He's not that guy, but he can get in passing lanes. He can bother opposing point guards. And here's a big key to him. He needs to be able to hit that occasional three. Like, when he's open, he did not shoot it well his first year. He needs to be able to hit that occasional three. And if he can do that, suddenly that's a viable backup point guard in any Big Ten ecosystem. So I've been higher on him for sure. I think he's a big part of this depth that's gotten a little better. Let's throw this up here. Christian Colmas says, I know we don't talk hockey, but I feel we need to give some love to the men's hockey team. Won their ninth. Only
7-4.
Yep.
Took down Notre Dame, swept them this weekend.
So
I follow them. I just know nothing about hockey. Otherwise, I would gladly talk about it. But yeah, they're having a great season. That coaching hire was possibly the best hire that has been made. So, I mean, he has been lights out for a team that has underwhelmed for such a long period of time.
Let's see. A couple more comments I want to throw up here. Justin, if you see anything as well. This is from Tyler. Gilmore still doesn't score and bring much, but he doesn't look so scared to have the ball in his hands. He does seem to be settled into his role. Like, there'll never not be some offensive issues with Gilmore. It just is what it is.
We've talked Store in terms of his lack of feel. Carter Gilmore has a lack of feel out on the court when he does certain things. Like, I feel like he's pre-planning what movie he's going to do when he starts going into it. Like, there's times I see him spin and I'm like, no, like there's too many bodies there. Like, just, you can't do that. And it's that type of thing that you look at with a guy that it's like, you have to be smarter than that and really understand what your job is to do out there. If there's a layup and there's nobody in front of you, go up and take it. If the shot clock's getting ready to expire and you have to take a jump shot, take the jump shot. But do not force things that aren't there. And like, to his credit, he hit that shot today on the layup. I didn't like what he was dribbling into there. It was not the smartest move, but he did finish. So I'll give him credit for finishing there.
McIntosh really nailed that hire going back to hockey again. 100%. Kathleen Burrows, I'm really excited about the hockey team. What a change. I'm all for, and Christian, reach out to me. I would be more than happy to come on and talk hockey. Let's do it. Like, I've had a couple of people come on and talk volleyball. I had the women's, I know basketball at least, but we had Coach Mosley on to talk women's basketball. I'm all about talking some of these. I just don't know it, right? But yeah, let's do it, man. Christian, reach out to me. Tim says Gilmore has a 56% field goal percentage. He's doing well. You should take a look at the shots he's taken.
Most of them are within 5 feet. But I won't argue it. He is not. Let's put it this way. Last year, he was a problem because there were times he would take shots that he was not capable of hitting. He really has done a good job this year of being selective and not really forcing much offensively. He's trying to be more productive and take shots that are there. And that's I really can't argue a lot with what I've seen from him play-wise. What Ryan and I have an issue with him from a limitation standpoint is if you start facing a team that's athletic and has size and has skill, he's a guy who's going to struggle. And number one, offensively, he's going to be non-existent. But defensively, even, he's going to have a problem with somebody who's hyper-athletic because he just doesn't move well enough. Like, he doesn't have the size, he doesn't have the explosiveness to really stay with somebody who's capable of doing it. And we saw it a couple times. He got dunked on a couple times where he had a chance to go up and to just flat out foul somebody to just take away a dunk earlier in the season. And I'm like, all right.
It kind of goes back to the old Jack Dunn conversations, right? Like, it's not his fault, right? Like,
no, he's a great dude and he plays his butt off.
We had hoped that a guy like Chris Hodges, who's a scholarship guy, or Ilver, who's a scholarship guy, that they had developed more to this point. There's a lack of depth in the front court, and that's a weakness of. Again, that's one of the things I talk about with depth. That's a bit of a weakness on this team still. Justin, I want to ask you this. Same thing in the let's see. Lord Croy says, I love this podcast. Watch every single one. Thank you, Lord. But come on, my dudes, be real. How much do you or any of us really know about any online coaches at any other programs?
I don't.
I haven't said
that's what I said.
What are we talking about?
I've said that Kansas has a really good, stout offensive line.
Offensive line coaches.
But I also preface that with they play a completely different style than we do. So it's really hard to equate that, him being able to translate here, which is why somebody who knows stuff has to be the one to do it.
Yeah, I have no clue. That's why, I don't know. But listen, it's also, I think this is the thing sometimes that people need to remember. It's not really, I don't know how to phrase this in a really great way. It's not really our job to know, right?
No.
The next position has to be a home run hire, or the next offensive line coach.
I can honestly tell you 95% of the people that talk on ESPN don't either. Mm-hmm. There's a few guys that are former players that may know. But for the most part, even them, like a quarterback talking about offensive line play, I'm going to guess that from a technique standpoint, they're not going to be an expert on who's a great offensive line coach and stuff like that.
They're watching the quarterback got hit. This in the comment too. Let me know in the comments, Justin. Let me know. Hunter says losing Store Wall would be the biggest hit to the team. I want to take this question and extend it to.
I think Wall would be the biggest one that they lose, or Chucky.
I was going to say, if you had to pick one player, or no, give me your top two. Who would be the top two players that would hurt this team the most if there was an injury hit? For me, it's Chucky. One for me, and then it's Crowell too.
Crowell too, yes. That would be the two. I think Wall, you would lose. There's some things you can do to work around Wall being out. Number one, you can go small, and you could probably move Store to the 4, and then you just move Blackwell into the starting lineup. Your depth is going to take a massive hit, but 100%, if you lose Crowell, you just don't have anybody that can replace that right now. Yep. Winter would really struggle in that setup because he's just not ready to be able to play 25, 30 minutes, probably fall out in 20 minutes.
Yeah. And then what do you do? Right. And then you're in more of a bind. And with Hepburn, like we just praised Kamari McGee, but Kamari McGee is not ready to do what Hepburn has been doing for really a lot of the season. And even what he had to do last year where we had to take more of the offense under it. By the way, that was probably good for Hepburn's development, right? To work more on that. And now he can be more situational with his offensive scoring. Mm-hmm. It was tough last year, but it's probably good for him long term. Those two, to me, it's Hepburn and Crowell. I think everybody else, listen, they're all would be huge losses, but you can work around those pieces a little bit more.
Well, yeah. I know Store creates quite a bit of gravity, but there are some things you can do. Like you would put Blackwell into the starting lineup, and he's going to create some problems too. Mm-hmm. Today, Store was not exactly lights out. Nebraska doesn't stink. I bet you anything that they finish top 5 or 6 in the league.
That's a bow comment there.
I will say that right now. It is a 2-team race. They're not gonna win it. It's 2 or 3 teams in the Big Ten. It's going to be Purdue, Wisconsin, or Illinois.
Tim says Blackwell could play point. I don't think so yet.
Probably next year he might start to be able to do some of that spot minutes at that.
He has great IQ. The thing that would hold him back, Tim, from playing point is his ball handling isn't where it needs to be. He's kind of a one dribble guy. He doesn't have secondary moves, and he's a little too careless with the ball still, which he's a freshman. He should be, but he doesn't have the ball handling, the ability to break someone down that a point guard needs to have. And I don't think from a passing standpoint, he's quite there yet.
He has great pace, though. He is one of those guys that you can see is like when he dribbles, he moves at his pace, not the defenders. And that's a big deal. Like you see bad point guards all the time that get sped up by a defender who really gets into him.
He does break the press well. You're right, Tim. He shows poise in those moments. This is a comment we had, Justin. I'll throw this up there too because it kind of ties into the IQ and the ability of Blackwell. This is from Tyler. Blackwell has the best freshman IQ since Nigel Hayes, possibly even better. I think from an IQ standpoint, that's a great comp. They're different players, different bodies, different positions, but just from an understanding the game, I think that's a perfect comp to me.
Bo Dragon, Illinois already does have legal issues. Shannon is gone for the season. You can kiss him goodbye. I don't know if they're going to have any with the team themselves, but right now that guy's gone. Like he's not going to be a part of this. We'll see how they withstand it the rest of the season, being able to hold up without Shannon. But that's a massive loss for them. He's their best player.
Justin, anything else? I think we'll wrap it up there. Our kind of second live show today. Appreciate everybody for tuning in as always. Again, we were just kind of texting back and forth, and Justin made the good point. let's just do it with the community.
Yep. They no, I don't have anything else to say on this. I mean, we're gonna find a lot out. This next week or two here is gonna have a lot going on. We're gonna probably find out 4 or 5 more portal guys that we add. We're gonna end up having a new offensive line coach because honestly, this is gonna probably be posted Monday, and it will probably be when the 7 days is up, it will be done. My guess is that they announced this. They probably know who they're hiring already.
Not a Will once more giveaway shows, man. I wish I could. I wish I could, man. This is a good point to bring this up. I randomized all the winners. I still need addresses from, while I got you here, Tyler Morgan, Tyler Romaine, John Estock, DJ Hungerford, Badger Ball 81, and Rob Sorensen. If any of you guys won and you're listening to this, or you listen to this later, maybe you already sent me your addresses and I missed it. I apologize. Send it to me on Twitter, Discord, whatever. So I need addresses from you guys, then all the prizes can go out. Like I said, I already randomized everything, so I already know who won everything. If anybody's curious, Dan O, who has reached out to me, he won the Joe Thomas helmet. But there's some other really good prizes out there. So send me your addresses if you haven't. And if you haven't, I missed it, I apologize. Send it to me again. Justin, you did not get the Joe Thomas helmet.
I know. I was not eligible to win Joe Thomas helmet.
You were not. Justin, awesome idea to jump on this. It was fun. It's always fun to chop it up with you guys.
Spring Bow Dragon spring game. I don't know about Ryan. I plan to go again.
Let's go.
All right, works for me. Let's do it, man. Let's go freeze our butts off again. Ryan can be in his shorts and the nice 25-degree weather when it's snowing on us.
Let's do it. I love it. Bo Dragon says no more linebackers. Listen, I've been saying that, Bo, and people keep yelling at me for it. So you and I are in the same canoe on this.
Well, I don't think anybody cares if bodies go out. Like if people leave, unless there's people that weren't planning on actually leaving. Some of these guys, I think, knew the writing was on the wall, and it's pretty clear that they weren't going to be really a part of the issue. There's been a lot of talk, and people kind of said this. One of the issues that there is with the new complexion of college football, there are guys who are going to look at it as just like, I got a scholarship. I can just stay here and just kind of be a drain. And that is not something that you can really have if you're trying to have the expectations that Wisconsin's going to have. You have to kick those guys out, and that stinks. But if they're never going to be productive for you in play, then what are you going to do? You can't just leave them sit there and eat up scholarship spots. That's going to crush your team, and it's going to hold you back. Wisconsin can't afford to lack depth like that. Yeah. And there's probably 20 bodies on the roster right now that we'd look at and be like, yeah, I probably wouldn't be hurting if this guy left.
A couple people in the comments, Ben Albin, give me Tackett. Tyler Streeper.
I'll take Tackett if they can get him.
Darren Wyman says, give me one more Tackett.
There's just other spots that we need. Defensive line is a massive problem right now. We cannot go into next season without at least 2 bodies in that defensive line room.
My head will explode if we get another linebacker. And here's the thing. If we get another linebacker and we finish this cycle without a boundary receiver or a defensive lineman or another corner and we have 6 linebackers, I think my head will explode. And I love Tackett. That's the thing. Like I shouldn't say nobody, very few people wanted Tackett in Madison more than I did last year. We've got 5 linebackers coming in. I don't know. It's crazy to me. But yeah, if Tackett came, would I, yeah, that'd be great. You got to get a defensive lineman and a receiver. But
we need more than one defensive lineman. They need at least a couple.
You need 2. Like, here's the thing. Like, this team, and Justin, by the way, I love this comment because I always say, like, we're done. And then we just keep talking.
Oh, yeah. This is my talent.
Not a will because the show goes on. Yeah, like, I already said goodbye, basically, and we're still talking about it. But here's my thing. Not having – this team is seriously capped unless the defense line gets a lot better. Yeah. That's my biggest thing. Like,
it massively is. If the defensive line is solid, the rest of the defense will play up, and that's the issue right now. Is the defense? I don't think the defensive line is going to be solid with what we have in that room right now. They need to absolutely add talent. If they can be solid with the guys we brought in, if things click, they have a chance to be a good defense. Because I really think they have the athletes to fly around if everyone knows what they're doing, and that will play up. Then you might be looking at the type of defenses that we were used to watching before, just a little bit more athletic. I don't think we'll necessarily be a team that's going to have a ton of sack numbers, but I think it will be significantly improved over what we saw before. And yes, that's exactly it. Speed.
Yep.
The linebackers will be flying everywhere in the middle of the field. realistically, what Fickle wants to do is he wants to eat up the middle of the field so that you have to, as a quarterback, attack the sidelines. And if that's the case, those are the hardest throws for a quarterback to make. There are very few of them that can do it at a high level for an entire game, which is why he plays defense that way.
And let's be real. Let's again, man. This show's gonna end up being like an hour and a half, but let's just scenario build really quick, right? Let's say nobody comes in the transfer portal. That means it's last year's defensive line with internal development of guys potentially like Jamel Howard, Curtis Neal, and you're adding Willer, you're adding Dylan Johnson. That's basically the group. That's not a. Even though I really like Dylan Johnson, we've talked about it. I really like Willer, and I was super high on Jamel Howard. That's not a big enough infusion of talent.
Mm-hmm.
In 2 or 3 years, that combination of guys they could all be studs. Not next year. Like that's too much to ask for freshmen coming in.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be good enough. It just isn't.
At most, you expect those guys to give you 10 to 15 snaps. At
and
most.
This is and that's a great point. That's what Brian Smith made a literal comment of, or not literal, but he said, listen, that's like a 15 to 20 snap guy. And if you start asking him to do more than that, you're not going to get out of him what you're hoping to get out of him, because he's going to get wore down as a freshman. He's going to hit a wall. So I don't think I'm overstating this. The fate of the defense rides on them getting better at the defensive line spot. And I hope they can do it.
Yeah. I 100% agree, because and people look at this. I think the pass rush will be better regardless of what happens with the defensive line. It's going to be the running defense that's going to be a problem. Like, we need to stop the run game for other teams. If we can't do that, we're going to get gutted, and it won't matter how good our pass rush is.
Joe Ferguson says Ernest on the way. Ben Albin says Curtis could be decent. He flashed in the bowl game. Kurt Neal definitely flashed in the bowl game.
I don't know if he's capable of playing 60 snaps, which is part of the problem. Like, he can't play at a high level for that many reps.
I love this comment because, Justin, you said something very similar when you and I were talking on the phone. He basically said the bowl game against LSU, if we have any semblance of pass rush or defense line, we smoke LSU off the field.
We do. Absolutely. If that quarterback gets uncomfortable at all, that game is over. Because if he's had to run for his life a little bit, even if it's not sacks, if you're just getting pressure on him, the throws he's not going to have all day to sit there and throw the ball up. Number one, a lot of those pass plays don't happen because he's not going to have guys that are 20, 30 yards downfield that he can throw it up to. And number two, he's going to be rattled. He's not going to be on target because he's going to be hearing footsteps. We've seen so many quarterbacks happen. There's nothing in my head that says Nussmeier is going to be a Heisman level quarterback who's one of those guys that is going to be making plays even with somebody stomping him. There's very few of those guys.
We had that team, and then you look at the box score, you threw some 40 times, he never got sacked. Like, that's a problem. And you got real Pac-12 teams coming in with, like, listen, defensive line, like Oregon's going to have a defensive line. Washington's going to have a defensive line. You got, actually, look at this.
Bama's week 3, I believe.
We got a Ducks fan in the chat. Ready to see my Duckies play y'all next year in Wisconsin. Is TBD starting next year for y'all? Who's going to be your quarterback? Yeah.
He should be. Yeah.
TBD will be the quarterback. Welcome to the chat, Ducks fan.
Yeah.
We have at least an entire offseason before we hate each other.
Hey, nice work in the portal. Dylan Gabriel was a heck of a sign.
Yeah. Welcome to the Big Ten, my friend. How is it treating you so far? I know it's just getting started, but we hope that it's fun at least until we play each other. Not a Whale says we owe you some payback. For, the Rose Bowl there.
Dude, Oregon's probably the team that's most likely to win the conference next year.
Let me throw this comment up. This is from Tyler, because I was talking about the need for another receiver. He said Anthony and Burrows didn't impress in the bowl game. So two things. They did, and Tretch did as well, but there still is, to me, a need of a proven guy. And the other part of that is LSU's secondary and defense all season was really bad. Mm-hmm. That's a very bad LSU defense, not even by their standards, by any standard. There's a reason that entire defensive coaching staff was fired. So those guys did impress me. I like Anthony. Burrows has upside, but if you go into next season and you don't upgrade there, you're putting an awful lot on their shoulders. I think you need to get somebody who can create. Listen, for everybody saying we need more linebackers, you need depth. Iron sharpens iron. Well, the same applies to receiver. Like, you need some more talent in there.
Yeah, Notawell, Duclona didn't impress either. He shouldn't have been playing. There's very few freshman corners that are ready to go, and he's got some talent, but I don't think he was ready, and especially not against. Like, you don't want to really be breaking him in against a team like LSU. That's a lot to ask for somebody that's that young of a player who honestly didn't play very much during the regular season.
Let's see. Zach Bart says we need a true alpha dog in that room. Defensive line is pieces, but they need an alpha. Yeah, I think it's really well said. All right, let's maybe start to wrap it there, Justin. I'm going to see if I can actually cut it because listen, we're going to talk again tomorrow. We got another show tomorrow.
Well, Ryan, what?
It's like midnight, 14 my time. I'm like also 3 IPAs in. I feel like I'm hiding it pretty well, but the longer this goes, the more cracks might start to appear in the facade of. Let's finish with any other comments. Ben Albin says our middle linebackers at the minimum will be better with Thomas and maybe Allegro. Linebackers will be better, Justin. I'm very confident in saying that.
Yeah, athletically, it's going to be night and day. I'll say that right now. And that's just a lot more length. Number one, Thomas is going to be – he has scheme knowledge. He's coming in. He's a guy who has been in this system before. He knows what he's supposed to be doing. And that right off the bat gives you an advantage. Rather than having two guys that don't know where they're going, you have one guy that is. And you also have one guy that can help him with his reads. So now you have somebody who will hopefully – upgrade the linebacker play overall in the middle. The guys on the outside, I actually think they're just better athletes. When you look at Pius, and I'll be quite honest, Peterson's going to get passed. Like, I'll be shocked if Lowry and Pius aren't the starters come game one.
What about Lafayette? So you and I talked before this influx of linebackers. You and I both said he's going to play next year.
I still think he'll play.
I don't know.
I don't know how much. I think there's going to be guys that kind of fall down the list. Like Peterson really didn't impress me this season.
I think Peterson can be a run. He can be that role of like the Noah Burks had played, of like the CJ Getz a little bit. Getz played too much because we didn't have depth, but I think Peterson could be a run stopper.
Is he the edge setter on that side though?
I think he could be. He's strong and physical. I think he can do that. I think maybe he's just been miscast as a guy we're hoping to get pressure on the quarterback when that's not been his game. He could play as that kind of 1st and 10 run setting edge. And then on 3rd and 7, a guy like Pius. Maybe that is Lafayette then. A guy like I'm not sure Lafayette plays now with the depth coming in. I was pretty sure.
It'll be interesting. We'll see how much he flashes in spring.
Okay. For real now. I'm going to end it. There are more comments I could still take, but appreciate everybody. Justin, we might just do another show tomorrow. I don't know. I think you guys got one tomorrow.
2 a.m. We'll be like, I can't sleep.
But anyway, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. It's late. It was a good show. Definitely more to come on Wisconsin. Send me your addresses if you haven't yet for the giveaway show for the winners. Justin, anything else?
No. I'll let you shut it down now.
All right, let's do it. Later, guys. We'll talk tomorrow.